Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, polar enthusiasts and adventurers. My name is Kate, and I am Head of International Sales here at Poseidon Expeditions, and I am very happy to see you all here. I'm talking to you all the way from the sunny Cyprus. I really had to crank up my AC to wear the beautiful red hoodie that we have. But first of all, I would like to welcome you to our webinar and, of course, to thank you all for finding time within your busy schedules and join our exciting talk. Firstly, and most importantly, I would like to introduce briefly at the moment our co-speakers. So today we have my colleague, Head of Sales in North America, Kathy DeVincenzo. She joined us all the way from Northeast Pennsylvania. And our very, very special guest that we have here today is Andy Pollard, sixth generation Falkland Islander, naturalist, and a very passionate birder. Andy is joining us all the way from the Falkland Islands, and Andy is currently based in Port Stanley. More about my beautiful co-host and our special guest just a little later. And now I would like to let you know that we also have today our colleague from the German office all the way from Hamburg, Agnes Schneider here, and she will be our moderator for today. Um, Without further ado, I would like to present to you our agenda. Let me just get us to the next slide. And do you mind doing that for me?
Yep, that's
Perfect. So without further ado, our program is very, very special today. So you briefly met our hosts, and after that, we will be talking about absolutely incredible hidden gems of travel destinations. So we will talk about the life on the Falkland Islands, and Andy will tell you everything about that. We will talk about the Falkland Islands and South Georgia as travel destinations. And of course, we will go and feature our expedition itineraries that go to the Falkland Islands and South Georgia. This webinar is actually special not only because we have a very special guest today, but also because we're talking about my most favorite destination that we feature, South Georgia. Um, just before we start talking about this incredible destinations, I would like to let you know just a few housekeeping rules. You're all on mute, dear guests, but we do have a chatter box with the questions that you can ask. So Agnes will be answering your questions as we go, and then at the very end of our session, we will also answer a few questions live as well. So to find this question box, please look at your right hand top corner, and you can just type away your questions, and Agnes will be happy to answer them for you. All right, now let's get on to the exciting stuff. Kathy, I would like to give the floor to you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy DiVincenzo. I am very excited. I just got back from our Arctic cruise, so I am just so willing to relay all this great information. I've been in travel for 47 years, and we've traveled the world, and we have never seen or experienced such amazing sights as we got to see in the Arctic. So please reach out to me. I do have a vast array of experience. I worked in the Caribbean and Mexico for hoteliers. I worked in Jamaica. I taught agents how to run their business. And most recently, I worked for a river cruise company that was a luxury company in Europe. So I have a vast array of experience. If I haven't met you, I'm looking forward to meeting you to teach you all about Poseidon expeditions.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for the introduction. And before we continue with our very special guest, I would like to say a few words about myself. I have been with Poseidon Expeditions for almost 14 years, and I have to say that from day one, it has been an incredible adventure of a lifetime. I've mentioned that South Georgia is a very, very dear to heart destination for me. And in 2022, I was actually very happy to be there and to visit it, and it stole my heart. So I am very happy to be here and to be talking to Andy and Kathy about this special, very, very special destination for me. And now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Andy. Andy, it's first of all, thank you so much for finding time and joining us here today to talk to our polar enthusiasts, to our travel partners about this absolutely incredible destinations. If you could start by telling us about your career, about your life in the Falklands, because it is just such a remote place to be. So the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate, and hello, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here talking and showing this presentation with you today. Maybe because this slide's up at the moment, I'll start with what my current role and profession is today, and then go back to life in the Falklands and how I build up to that. But as you see, hopefully you're not too focused on me in this picture, and you can see the stunning landscape scenery there of St Andrews Bay in South Georgia. Last season, I joined Poseidon for the very first time as an expedition guide, and with a role of photography involved in there as well, but also birding. Today, I also run my guiding business in the Falklands, which really focuses on doing a lot of day trips out to the destinations here, but I also guide different groups around the Falklands here, both from a bird watching perspective, a photography perspective, but also just for people who like a bit of everything in that sense there. And it was probably actually through guiding through one of the UK-based companies that I work with that put me into connection with Poseidon, and that's how this journey starts. So maybe I'll move on there, Kate. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Andy, first of all, it's a great introduction, but I think what everyone is thinking about is what does it feel like to be so remote and to actually spend all of your life there as well, or at least most of it. Andy, let me know if you can go through the slides on your end, if everything is working.
Okay. I'm just trying to move slide on now, Kate. I think you might have to move that on. Sorry, it seems to have gone off for me now. So life and oh, there we go. Take that. So life in the Falklands. Yes, I should have said actually that I am in the Falkland Islands as we speak now in Stanley here in my home. I'll be heading to warmer summer temperatures soon. So no air conditioning for me today. Life as a Falkland Islander. So I got introduced by Kate as a sixth generation Falkland Islander. So that takes my family all the way back to arriving in the Falklands in 1849. Which was via a garrison of military pensioners that came here. Just to put that into perspective, that Stanley was first started to be built here. The capital of the Falklands was starting to be built here in 1843, and people moved in 1845. So it was only 4 years after the establishment of that. And the other thing too is it was only 15 years actually after Charles Darwin visited the Falklands for the second time. So it was kind of a long time back there. And one of my early ancestors in the Falkland Islands here tried to repopulate the islands quickly and had 23 children. So I think it's still a record here in the Falklands. As a child, sorry, Kate.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. As a child growing up here in the Falklands, I deem myself as to be very lucky. We don't have what we do have here in the Falklands is large open spaces. If you want to look at the Falkland Islands from a size perspective, it's roughly the size of Northern Ireland in the UK, and with a population of 3,700 people, you don't have to do the maths to work out that that's a low population density. I grew up in the Falklands. My family were farmers. Although I lived in Stanley, it was my ancestors were farmers. So I was very lucky to spend a lot of time out in what we would call the camp in the rural countryside, and with family and friends. And that really connected me for the first time kind of with nature. as I kind of went through my schooling days, I then got an interest in agriculture with farmers. And I actually went to university and college and studied agriculture and finally specialized in plant science, which you might say is a little bit away from bird watching and photography. But as my time developed on, I worked with the Department of Agriculture and ended up running the Department of Agriculture in the Falklands. And later, I managed three of the largest farms here in the Falklands. So my connection to the land, started pretty early on. Um, my mother then became manager of Sea Lion Island, which, when we show a map later, which is one of our premier destinations, enabled me to not only go out to see my mother on a regular basis, but also to engorge myself in the wildlife that was there. And that's really when I started to develop an affinity for bird watching and for photography. So then I turned 40, which seemed to change everything in my mind for some reason. And suddenly the corporate career was not for me anymore. I wasn't doing my hobbies of bird watching and photography. Dust was starting to accumulate on both of them. So I changed my career path, which didn't please my dad first off, but he's learned to accept that now, and gone down the line of setting up my own business with nature and working with Poseidon. Um, so that's a little bit about myself, and I guess for a lot of Falkland Islanders, we would follow the same kind of path. We can be schooled here, but we go away to study, and generally come back here to live. But certainly a big part of it for me is the close affinity to nature and the wildlife, and often being with it on your own.
Thank you very much, Andy. And I think it's a great career path, as long as at the end of it, or, you finally find something that makes you happy. I think that's the most important thing. And well, to be honest, I'm very happy that here at Poseidon we can actually meet people like yourselves, and it's absolutely incredible industry to work at. Before we go talking about the wildlife, absolutely epic wildlife in those two beautiful islands, I would like just to tell a few words about Poseidon for those who are joining us maybe for the first time. So here at Poseidon Expeditions, we're absolutely passionate about small expedition cruises in the polar areas. And of course, South Georgia and Falklands are not so much polar, but they're very well connected to those beautiful areas. At Poseidon Expeditions, we operate incredible, absolutely classic retro style ship that's called Sea Spirit, and you can see it on this picture. It's a small expedition ship with a maximum passenger capacity of 114 guests, and this size and the style of the ship allows us to do absolute magic when we take our guests to the beautiful destinations and the polar world. You can see the Sea Spirit here in her polar realm, and we're very happy with her. She is very comfortable. She is home away from home, and I think Andy and Kathy, you can agree with me that it's probably one of the best ships for the best experience to travel in the polar regions.
I couldn't
Uh,
agree more.
Exactly. And Kathy, you just got back from the
Fantastic.
Arctic trip yourself. Maybe just a few words about it. What was the most epic thing that you've seen or experienced when you were aboard?
Quite honestly, it's the people. And the ship is beautiful. She's in remarkable shape. The cabins are huge, but it's the feeling you get. And there's a thing in travel that says you never forget how something made you feel. And when you're on the ship with our crew, our expedition leader, our expedition guides, they just make it so spectacular for our guests. And they do fun things, they do educational things. They myself, I was a little bit afraid to get in the zodiacs because I'm a little bit older than most. I'm 67. They helped me get in and out. Before you knew it, I was doing great in and out of the zodiacs. But it was the scenery, it was the people, but it was the whole thing. We celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, wedding couples. We had multi-gen families, but everybody had a great time, and it was because of our people.
Thank you so much, Kathy. With Sea Spirit here at Poseidon Expeditions, we don't only go to the Arctic. So, just briefly to let you know that our key destinations are the British Isles, where we do uh, quite a lot of small islands where you cannot really get with the bigger ships. We also visit Faroes and Fair Isle, Shetlands, and we also follow up to Jan Mayen, and after that we take the Spirit to the Arctic, where we concentrate or focus our operations in Svalbard and Greenland. And of course, during the Antarctic summertime, we are taking our guests there to explore the Antarctic Peninsula, South Georgia, and Falkland Islands. And of course, you will hear more about the last two, so much more. Andy, and now back to you, because I don't think there is a better person to introduce the Falkland Islands than you. So please tell us what it is so special about the Falkland Islands, why the guests are traveling there from all over the world, and it's quite a challenge to get there as well, right? So please tell us and share your love for the Falklands.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Yeah, I mentioned a couple of the factors already, but it's worth re-emphasising that there's no doubt. I mean, people come to the Falkland Islands for several main reasons. One of the top reason, and these are my opinions, sorry, but the top reason is wildlife. Um, People also do come to the Falklands here for the military history. Some people come to the Falklands here for the maritime history. Kind of as a lot of shipwrecks years and years ago got wrecked off Cape Horn. That there's a kind of a very rich history with ships here, and I mentioned earlier the Beagle with Charles Darwin, and also with Shackleton and other things too. So kind of there's a lot of history, but it's mainly the wildlife that people come here for. And actually, two of the places that Charles Darwin did highlight when he published his kind of works was that the Galapagos and the Falkland Islands were unique for two reasons. Of course, he didn't go everywhere in the world, so he was talking about where he went to. But one of the things that made it so unique was that first of all that there was a lack of people around. So that had a knock-on effect, really, or does have a knock-on effect today to the wildlife being very approachable. So here, we have limits as to how close people can go towards the wildlife, but half the time the wildlife comes towards you, and I think that's quite a unique thing in the world today. This also does happen, of course, on South Georgia. But I guess the heartbeat of the Falkland Islands really is what we call the camp, where we were before. And there was this image here, kind of with a sheep with a lamb with the king penguins, is typifies the Falklands really, of how kind of the economy of the Falklands is generated largely by fisheries, but also by agriculture and tourism. So we have to work with our resource not only for us to live and thrive as a country, but also to protect the very very things that we generate the revenue from. I think if you took away camp from the Falklands and we had an urban living here, most people would leave because that's what they're naturally attached to. And here we don't have many security guards in the Falklands, but the penguins will stop you from going too close. Yeah.
Andy,
Andy,
could you go over the rule with approaching penguins?
Yes, so I mean, rules can vary between different countries, but the rule here would be 5 to 6 meters. I think it's 5 meters in South Georgia, 6 meters in the Falkland Islands. So we'll probably try to keep that to the same standard. And actually for some species of wildlife, such as the southern giant petrel, which are very sensitive rookeries, guides would keep you probably 50 meters away from those areas there for obvious reasons. But one of the things I found with my time on Sea Spirit from an expedition guiding point of view was that most of the time you're guiding people who are like-minded and join these trips because they understand the sensitivity of the wildlife. So we explain these rules when people go on board, but at the same time too that I think people understand them pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Perfect. Andy, could you try going through slides? I think it should work on your end at the moment.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep, there we go. Good. Okay, so so now we move on to the wildlife. I'm kind of in this section here really talking about the wildlife of the Falklands, but there will be crossover with South Georgia, so there's no pointing in kind of repeating, kind of it in two different sections. But in the Falkland Islands, there's 5 breeding species of penguins, and one of the highlights for people to come and see here are the king penguins. Um, you might be surprised when I tell you that there's 1,500 pairs of king penguins in the Falklands, but in South Georgia there's 450,000 pairs. And on purposely here, I've selected images of mine that show you the closeness, the personal side of the images, rather than if you can think back to when you saw me just now, stood over St Andrews Bay with that wide landscape, that both these locations complement themselves very well. They don't split off into two sides, but these photographs are generally taken with a zoom lens. In South Georgia, you'd be looking more at taking photographs with a wide angle lens. So, kind of those landscapes and wild sceneries of South Georgia in huge numbers are complemented by the, kind of the approachability and closeness of photographing the wildlife here in the Falklands. And then hopefully we'll move on to Gen 2 penguins, another penguin species that you'll see both in the Falkland Islands and South Georgia. But actually this time round, we do slightly pip South Georgia on numbers. So there's, I think, about 140,000 pairs of Gen 2s in the Falklands and 100,000 pairs of birds in South Georgia. Both these penguin species are classified globally as least concern. So they're actually kind of, the populations are very stable, although, there has been bird flu in this part of the world, so we don't know until the next census. But one of the most spectacular sights for me is seeing penguins return in the afternoon from a day out fishing to come back and feed their chicks, and trying to capture images like this, which actually probably is one of my favorite and best photographs on the left side, is kind of what a lot of people try to achieve. But I also love personality in photography, and you can see that from the penguin that must have returned back and is in trouble in its colony. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to say if it's male or female because I don't know, but you can decide that yourself. And this is probably, if I was to name several species to come and to the Falklands to visit, in addition to visiting South Georgia, this is certainly one of them. This is a penguin species that you will not see in South Georgia. And actually, this is probably probably in the Falklands, our most threatened seabird at the moment. It does tend to nest on cliff areas, and it's not the best mother. So a lot of the problems are associated with parenting, but also kind of we have to be careful monitoring food stocks with our fishery to make sure that is not an issue for the penguins as well. Always more that can be done in that area. But these are the Bolshe penguins. These are the ones that have a real attitude as well. So absolutely characters, and you can see why they're called rock hoppers from the one there on the left hand side. And then our fourth main species of penguin is in the Falklands is the Magellanic penguin. Again, another species that you won't see in South Georgia, but if you travel to Ushuaia and travel into Argentina, then you might see the penguins there, because Argentina is actually the stronghold for this penguin with about 900,000 pairs. In the Falklands, we have 100,000 pairs, but the penguin's different, but it's kind of closely associated with it. It's a banded penguin, so it's very similar in a way to the South African penguin, the Galapagos penguin, and the Humboldt penguin. But often overlooked, but a spectacular bird, and probably along with kind of birds like emperor penguins and king penguins today, because of Disney productions, probably one of the penguins that people would most associate in their mind if they had to draw one. This, of course, is different as well, because this is a ground burrowing penguin, whereas in the Falklands, all of the other species are above ground. And I should say that all of these photographs that I'm showing you at the moment, I have taken myself, and all been taken in the Falkland Islands. So it's important to show you photos from where we're trying to where we're talking about as destinations. I haven't put up on here macaroni penguin, because in the Falkland Islands there are only a few macaroni penguins, but when we move on to the South Georgia section, that becomes a very prevalent species in South Georgia. But probably alongside the rockhopper penguins, another one of the must-see kind of species in the Falkland Islands is the black-browed albatross. Visiting these locations in the Falklands, we actually get the opportunity to go to the breeding colonies. So, dependent on time of the year, they may be sitting on an egg. They may have a young chick, and later in the season, people may see them with a fledgling chick. These animals are both, there's the romance behind the albatross species, birds that generally tend to mate for life. Actually, out of all the albatross species, black-browed albatross are one of the least faithful in that regards. And maybe the albatross on the bottom right-hand corner there are the next candidates for divorce compared to the ones on the left there.
Andy, with the land tours that you do and offer in the Falklands, do you see a lot of birders coming and joining just to see one of this incredible species?
Yeah, and actually there'll be, and I'll that it'll be good to touch on that, Kate, in a minute, with another species that's pretty
Perfect.
unique in the Falklands as well. But people do. I mean, a lot of people do come here because they have a general interest in the Falklands. A lot of people come here because of there's no doubt the flagship species in the Falklands are the penguins and the albatross. But from a bird watching perspective, there's other species that people come here to see. So I will highlight them as we get to them in a minute as well.
Please.
And this is the lesser cousin to the penguin species, one of our two cormorant species, the imperial cormorant or king cormorant in South Georgia. Hopefully you'll get to see the blue-eyed shag. These are probably shags as well, but the names get muddled around a fair bit there. But this is actually my favorite bird of all of our birds to photograph in the spring. Like these two portrait images of the birds, you can see that quiff that comes up. But that orange nasal bob and that blue eye make it a terrific subject. And when you look at the picture of the bird flying in, they're actually quite clumsy and entertaining in their landing too. So quite often I take people to penguin colonies, and after guiding them and leaving them to themselves to look at the wildlife, this is quite often where you will find me with these birds, the imperial cormorants. Okay, in the Falkland Islands, there's also about 8 or 9 passerine species that are here. All three of these birds are endemics in the Falklands. The bird in the top right, the Cobb's wren, that is an actual endemic species to the Falklands, whereas the grass wren on the left and the long-tailed meadowlark at the bottom are both endemic subspecies to the island. So we have 2 endemic species in the Falklands, and we have 9 endemic subspecies, and most of the passerines are endemic subspecies. But beautiful birds in their own right, and the wrens are actually one of my favourite species to photograph as well, often overlooked.
Pictures are beautiful.
And actually, on
Yeah, it
that
took me a
note,
long
I would
time. Sorry, Kate, carry on.
Just a quick note to say that if you're asking yourself, if what kind of people with what kind of interests go to the Falkland Islands, so not only birders, but obviously it's a paradise for photographers and especially wildlife photographers. So it seems like there's a whole lot of opportunities to be able to take the shots just like this.
It absolutely, Kate, and it's important to highlight that because, I mean, to me, two of the most prestigious photography competitions in the world are Wildlife Photographer of the Year and Bird Photographer of the Year. And Bird Photographer of the Year, of course, suits the Falklands perfectly, although we do have some sea mammals here as well. But I did actually look through a number of books a while back and did a count, and because it's a British photography competition, there's a lot of UK entries, very heavily on entries from the United States as well. But actually, in terms of winning entries into those competitions, the Falkland Islands was about sixth or seventh. So when you think about how big it is, and how and how remote it is in that aspects, it is a photography paradise. It's also very much a seabird paradise as well, in that sense there. But as well as the endemics, we also have the endemic waterfowl that are here as well. So there's two endemic bird species in the Falklands: the Cobb's wren that we saw just now, but also on the left here we have the Falkland steamer duck, a very robust sea duck, that can only be seen here. In the middle there we have the ruddy-headed goose, which I think in near time will become an endemic species too, but at the moment it's an endemic subspecies. If you do a bird trip in southern Patagonia, this will be one of the hardest birds you can see. In the Falkland Islands, they're abundant. They're kind of everywhere. And on the right, we've got the stunning white-tufted grebe, which is again another endemic subspecies with its chick there on the back.
Oh, these are
It's not
cute.
just all about it's not just all about birds. It's quite hard to get a cute picture of an elephant seal, apart from when it's a weaner and young. But just for size perspective, the elephant seals in the top right there, that's actually a female and a male. So it's not a young. So those big males can grow to about 18 feet long, and weigh up to about 4 tons in weight. The very biggest ones. In the Falkland Islands, there's a relatively small population here of a couple of thousand, but in South Georgia, there's well over 100,000 breeding pairs of elephant seals. So it's certainly one of the highlight species to see. Uh, Also in the Falkland Islands, we have southern sea lion that there's a chance of seeing. Southern fur seal is a difficult one to see because of where it chooses to have its breeding grounds. And also the Falklands is very underrated for dolphins actually as well. This photograph at the bottom right is taken here close to Stanley, just 15 minutes from my house, but Saunders Island and Bertha's Beach, which is a couple of locations where Sea Spirit tries to get into, is fantastic for dolphins.
Andy,
I'll probably and I'll probably
is there like a special place on a beach or inland or something that you find these, and where would be the most active breeding grounds?
well we Callie, we can find them. We can find these pretty much around all of the coast in the Falklands. Sea Lion Island is a place where you don't see them, but that's probably connected to the fact that it's a common ground to see killer whales there actually. So because it's not their first choice, but they would predate on dolphins if it came to it, the killer whales. But they do like certain locations, and they're very studied. So we don't know why it is specific in these locations, but it's not unusual to see around the neck on Saunders Island as an example, to see kind of 20 or 30 of these basking in the inshore waters. And there was one time when I flew from Saunders to Carcass Island in the northwest of Falklands, probably a 15-20 minute flight, and I counted hundreds of dolphins. So so very prevalent, but probably often overlooked compared to the cetacean species, which I haven't got photographs here of, but one of the things I would say with cetaceans is that the Falkland Islands, like South Georgia, was a place that went, with industrial whaling, so numbers were decimated. As a child growing up in the Falklands, I probably didn't see a whale until I was about 20 years old, apart from killer whales, and the occasional pod of pilot whales, blackfish. But today, now in the Falklands, we're designated the only key biodiversity area designated to sei whales in the winter time. So now, actually, probably this afternoon, I'll go to Cape Pembroke and hopefully see southern right whales that are off there at the moment. They come here to mate before they kind of feed in the Antarctic or calf further north up around Brazil. But also humpback whales. So things are changing here, kind of very quickly for the positive. I hope. We know numbers are building up because the whale population seem to be doing a lot better in South Georgia and the Antarctic. We just don't know how things move around the oceans in terms of food and connections to climate change and things like that as well. But certainly today it's a haven for whales compared to what it was 20 years ago.
Well, that's wonderful news.
And I saved this one till last because this is what I consider to be another very underrated species in the Falklands, and one of my favourite species, and it's the strided caracara, or locally we would call this the Johnny Rook. This is an immature bird, so probably a 2-year-old, probably 4 or 5 years old before they breed. But a bird that was heavily persecuted, kind of many years ago, and today it's probably globally there's probably only about 1,500, 2,000 of these birds. In the Falklands, there's about 500 to 600 pairs. So the Falklands is the stronghold for this caracara. But I think it kind of might hold the title of the world's rarest bird of prey. I'm happy to be challenged on that, and also the world's southernmost bird of prey. Along with we also have there are some other species here of birds of prey in the Falklands as well. But what makes this bird unique is it's actually its intelligence. There's been a lot of studies recently to have a look at this, and years ago when the world was all joined up between South America, Antarctica, Australia, New Zealand, birds kind of moved away, and the falcon species in particular migrated all over the world. A bird like peregrine falcons, and most of their hunting exists by eyesight and by speed. That's how they've evolved over the years to cater for that. The strided caracara has moved barely past the southern parts of Patagonia, and its closest relative actually is the New Zealand parrot species, so the kea, kind of in particular there. And what these birds seem to have evolved instead of great eyesight and speed is their intelligence. So if you're at one of these Falkland Island destinations, these birds will come down and as a bird of prey and will walk along a ground because they're a ground walking bird of prey, and often come and sit at you. But a word warning in advance: don't leave anything laying around because they'll take it off and they'll investigate it. Yeah.
Andy, would you say that the best season, especially for the birders, would that be the summertime as well? Or you can for the lunch program in the Falklands, you receive guests all year round, or is it still the summertime?
Yep. So in the Falklands, in the Falklands we can take guests all year round. Many destinations do close, but there's always places that are open. But our main season really operates between October and March, and there's several reasons why the season is short like that. One thing is weather. Kind of you've got to be pretty hardy to stick out. Kind of September months in the Falklands or the April months from that perspective. But daylight, it's not like being in the Antarctic or in the Arctic. But daylight can get down here at this time of the year now to maybe only 7 hours. So you don't want to come to visit the Falklands when daylight's low, unless you want to see southern right whales. Then it might be worth it. But also, kind of with the seasons as well, that we also, of course, have a lot of migratory species. So, well, not a huge amount actually, but we have certainly 6 summer breeders here in the Falklands. But two of those that are important for people to come and see are the black-barred albatross and the rockhopper penguins, like I've mentioned before. So ideally in those months, but people often ask me what is the best time to travel, and people would have to advise me on what it is they want to see the most, because not one time of the year ticks the box for everything, but every time of the year ticks the box for something. So October, for example, is magical for elephant seals and the pups. Kind of from that aspect there, and birds returning. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of mating going on. But if you want to see chicks, you need to be, a bit later in the year, and king penguin chicks aren't born until the new year. So difficult to pick a time, but I'm always happy to people want to ask me questions. Please ask me questions, even off this webinar today.
So Andy, I do.
One of the questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Just having returned, and we have our zodiac tours in the morning and the afternoon and everything. So my question is, when I was researching all of this, I saw all of the wildlife on the beaches. So when we get off of a zodiac, and our guides help everybody so proficiently, but with the birds so close, how do we manage that?
Yep. So, well, the guides are well instructed and well qualified on this basis. So, for example, on the Falkland Islands last year, because I was the local islander, that one of the first things that what always happens is when you arrive at a destination, the first thing you do is check that everything's okay to land. So that'll be, from a safety perspective, but also, unfortunately, in these days, it's also a bird flu, kind of requirement as well. We've got to look after the wildlife, but B, we don't want to subject people to seeing things that are not going to be memorable, kind of in that sense there. But then when ashore, we will then, scout out a route that minimizes the impact that people have around the wildlife and gets you to the key places to view the spectacular and photograph the spectacular. And of course, there's guides, kind of spread out along the way to help that. There's also very informative presentations given on board the ship that highlight things, and I think the kind of the welcoming and friendly nature of all the expedition guides, kind of enables people to talk freely with them and ask questions. And if I see somebody's doing something wrong, I won't shout at you, but I will tell you, kind of quietly what's happened and what you should do in the future.
Well, thank you.
And Kathy, you said a very, very important thing there about most of the wildlife being coastal in the Falkland Islands, which is ideal for a trip like we do with Sea Spirit, because that's how you access these areas. But the question could be, why is that the case? And I meant the abundance of wildlife in the Southern Oceans is largely because there's a lot of food in the Southern Oceans. It's to do with currents and plates and upwellings and aspects like this, which hopefully you will get a presentation and learn a lot more about that by one of the expedition guides as well. But the most important habitats in the Falklands, and exactly the same actually for South Georgia too, are the coastal environment, which is largely a giant kelp seaweed habitat, very important for a lot of species to spawn, lay their eggs. And also the second most important kind of habitat in the Falklands is what we have here in this slide, which is the tussock grass. And I've tried to show these images for a reason. The image on the top right is what it should be like, and you'll see a family of sea lions in there. The photograph on the left is exactly the same as that, but I've put one with people in because this tussock grass can grow to 2 or 3 meters high. There's no native trees in the Falklands or South Georgia, but this habitat provides, the best sheltered breeding ground that the animals can have, and also important for burrowing seabirds. That's a colony of rockhopper penguins on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, I mentioned earlier that the economy of the Falklands is driven by its natural resources. It's important that we look after those natural resources, both for ourselves and the wildlife. In the past, because of either overgrazing of livestock, the lighting of fires to burn off pastures, or sometimes naturally by lightning, we lose these tussock stands. And wildfires, unfortunately, with the climate, are becoming a more common occurrence. So what we're trying to do is look at how we can revegetate these areas as quickly as possible and try to minimize the damage. And last year, I volunteered with Falklands Conservation to go to Pebble Islet, which was my first trip off Pebble Island. And this tussock grass here was actually some of the stuff that I planted last year. So I look forward to going back here in a few years' time and hopefully seeing it looking more like the other two healthier images that are there.
That sounds like an incredible initiative, Andy. Hopefully, it will continue growing in that direction.
No, absolutely, and what people are looking at in the Falklands more and more is that if we plant 20 hectares of this a year, how can we plant 200 hectares? How can we upscale and do more? And what I'm very pleased with is that local businesses actually do help to provide the support and importantly they provide people as well to help do that. So no, very positive, very positive stuff for a initially bad story. So yeah. So this is a map of the Falkland Islands. You have there's about 700, 800 separate islands in the Falklands. It's a good discussion. If you join us on board, I can have a discussion with you about what defines an island. I should have said at the start actually that hopefully I will be on board for the season from October until December. So I'm talking to you now, and if you join the trip, hopefully we can have more conversations afterwards. But with this map of the Falklands, it's very, very hard to see at the scale. But if you look around the coast, you'll see a lot of islands and you'll see a lot of icons that are placed on them, which are the different bird species. These are the type of areas that we try to get to in Sea Spirit. Where the exact location you get to will depend on multiple different reasons, none more so than the climate. But like South Georgia, you try to get to the prime places where you can do. But it's also showing that the kind of whilst wildlife is scattered across the whole of the Falkland Islands, the more biodiverse, rich areas are the outer islands to get to. So actually, even if you visit the Falklands, you would have to fly to visit these islands. So it's another good way of seeing them. And just to zoom in a little bit, I talked about with the dolphins just now the neck at Saunders Island, and this is where we are at the moment. On the image on the left, you can see two main things. You can see the sand beach, which is the neck area that you'll see on the map. And then if you go to the right along that track past the sealer's tripod, we used to have a sealing industry here as well as a whaling industry. You'll see up on the hill a southern penguin and a southern rockhopper penguin and an imperial cormorant. The reason why I put this slide in here was to show you the relatively short distances that we walk to get to this wildlife. So this is actually probably one of the longest walks that that I did last season. But it's just showing you that that there are that it is a little bit higher. So there is an element of physical fitness to go with it, but it's not a large area in terms of distance. And even at these sites, if you feel that you cannot go all the way up there, if you look at the neck there's a small population of king penguins on the beach. There's Gentoo penguins on the beach. There's Magellanic penguins on the beach. So there's enough to keep you engaged.
Andy, for our clients that are listening, how rigorous of a walk is it to see the various penguins and go up the hill? Like how far and how rigorous?
It's I think most people, if they want to, can go to most of these sites. Where we can do, we will try to kind of assist people by the use of a vehicle or something like that. But if we've got 100 people kind of on the beach, and a Land Rover can take 4 people, it's very important to prioritize who gets in there. So it's not a for me notifying people that you can save your legs by getting in a vehicle and driving up there. But we will try to help people where we can do. Here on the neck on Saunders, you couldn't do that because this is the side of a mountain. but a site like West Point Island, kind of we can do, but there's no guarantees. This is often, kind of partly, with the hospitality, kind of the landowners as well. So it all depends on what's happening on the day and moving. So, but I think it's important that people have realistic ambitions too. We don't want people to, when people are ashore, we are ashore for a certain amount of time. We're not there all day. So, kind of prioritizing what you see and where you go kind of is important. So before any of these landings, the expedition leader will always give a briefing the day before, and kind of, if this isn't covered, that's a question that people should ask afterwards. Yeah.
And for our travel agents that are looking, we have a bunch of different options with various ability levels for their clients.
Yep. So there's going to be the unfortunate thing with black-bread albatross, because actually this is where the black-bread albatross are nesting too on Saunders Island here, is that they choose habitats that are not the easiest to walk to. So I mean, with a guide and time, I mean, actually this is one of the important reasons why, kind of Sea Spirit's an ideal ship to travel on, because if you were a ship coming into South Georgia, because South Georgia is a bit more restricted than the Falklands from this aspect, but if you were a ship with 200 passengers on it, you'd probably only get half the time ashore that you do with 100 passengers. So it does give you more time to get there. I think to get to these rockhopper penguins is achievable for a lot of people. To get a little bit further around to where the albatross is a bit more of a challenge in that sense, but kind of the colony on West Point Island, for an example, kind of providing that there's a vehicle there to be used, which there has been every time I've been there, kind of would get people to the colony itself. So it is something to be wary of, but I guess as well that, kind of, I mean, I'm always open to questions from people, and we have agencies here in the Falklands and the team at Poseidon as well that can, kind of that can help with trying to answer some of these questions. Yeah. Because
Great. Well, thank
I
you.
have occasionally myself, I've guided for groups coming here to the Falklands on some more strenuous routes, and it's been very, very difficult to get the people to do it, which makes it difficult for me as a guide, but also makes it difficult for, it's also, kind of disheartening for the people. So yeah, from that side.
So it's important to know that we're going to address all of these things so that we can have the best opportunities for our guests.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I guess a lot of the time, we would try to get into the sites that are more accessible. But if the weather dictates, and other aspects, that second best is sometimes better than nothing. So kind of, yeah, sometimes the kind of the plan B might be not as accessible as plan A in that sense there. So it's important that people do know that. But an important message is there's kind of there's always things to see in that aspect there. And with something like the black-bread albatross, we want to see them in their colonies, but we will see them on the wing, from the, actually I didn't even mention the pelagic side of being on the ship as well, is that the travel to the Falklands, the travel to South Georgia, the travel back from South Georgia, the time on board is we will see a lot of seabirds, including multiple varieties of different albatrosses and petrels. So it's spectacular in itself. And if the expedition team are ever trying to find me and I'm on quiet time, they normally go out and have a look on the deck, because I'm still intrigued. I've spent many an hour on there, and I'll still try to spend many more hours. Yeah.
And that is the beauty of the expedition cruising, right? So you do explore so much when you are on land, but even if you are sailing, when you are aboard the ship, you actually still explore and still have incredible encounters with the wildlife and incredible birds. Andy, I know that you're very, very passionate about the Falkland Islands, and we don't really have too much time in our session today. So if we could move a little bit closer to the South Georgia and highlight this destination as well.
Absolutely. So we'll skip through these slides. This is just a slide where you welcomed into Stanley. these are just pictures of the beaches around Stanley, and now we're into South Georgia. These, what I should say is, these first three images that are up here are my images from last year. I'm guilty, as most photographers are, of taking years to process the photographs that you took from the year before. So most of the other images here have come from the team at Poseidon, that would have been taken by, kind of many expedition staff over the years. So credit should be given to them for other images. But to me, this is one of the differences between, kind of the Falkland Islands and South Georgia. You've seen the picture at St Andrews Bay. Now we've arrived in Grytviken, the one of the Norwegian whaling stations from the past. And there's a pair of elephant seals not too far away from where our Zodiacs are landing. You will always be safe. We won't land people where it's not safe. But these are two decent-sized male elephant seals having a fight with each other, which was nice to capture. But behind, you'll start to see, kind of mountains and snow, which are not really a feature of the Falkland Island landscape, but very much a feature of the South Georgia landscape.
And I was, like I said, very lucky to travel to South Georgia back in 2022 with Seaspirit. So we visited Antarctica first, moved on to South Georgia and Falkland Islands. It's a pity that we didn't spend too much time on the Falklands. I think it was just a day. But during that trip, everything I read or saw about South Georgia came into absolute light. And when people ask me, what does it feel like to be, in such a wildlife abundance, I usually say, we all love the films of Sir David Attenborough, and to be in South Georgia actually feels like you're in one of those movies. And I think this is the best description, because the abundance of wildlife in nature is just absolutely epic, and that's not something that you can imagine, I think.
No, absolutely. I mean the images that or the images that you see of the wildlife in South Georgia are almost jigsaw puzzle like, where you can imagine that if you had a jigsaw of the king penguins on St Andrews Bay, or on Salisbury Plain or Gold Harbour, it would be a nightmare to do. It'd be almost like doing a jigsaw puzzle of baked beans, because there's just so many of them. Thankfully, they're different colours, which does help a little bit, but but no, you're right. I live 800 miles away from South Georgia, which is about as close to South Georgia as you can get. And for any Falkland Islander, really, it's always a top of the wish list. Top of the list of places that you want to get to. So, I was thrilled last year to not only kind of be part of the expedition team with Poseidon, to get to go there, but also to witness just the spectacular place that it is. Yeah, it's mind blowing.
And moving on, you've mentioned so many times the king penguins. And yes, you can find them in the Falkland Islands, but I think if you're really keen on exploring and seeing the huge colonies of the king penguins, and I think you have a few pictures there, Andy, as well, South Georgia is the place to be.
No, it is absolutely. It's funny, actually, because you sometimes, what I find with wildlife photography, and I guess this happens also just to people who are not photographers, but you don't have to be a photographer to come on these trips. What you see is amazing in itself, and actually, we quite often tell photographers when we're giving lectures to put the camera down and have a look as well, because sometimes you can get caught, but kind of get caught behind the lens, but it is. But the amazing thing too is that you might be looking at king penguins, but next minute you realise there's a large number of fur seals around, a large number of southern elephant seals around, a large number of skuas or southern northern giant petrels around, and things just distract you. It's almost difficult to focus on a individual thing, because there's so much going on. Um, and there we have, that was the Antarctic fur seal, which is one of the signature species there. 98% of the Antarctic fur seals are in Antarctica. We have one of the Antarctic terns on the right. An unusual visitor at Stromness was an Adelie penguin, but I guess I put that there to show you that always the unexpected. You never know what might turn up there. That was my first ever sighting of an Adelie penguin.
Andy,
But
we have a
normally
Perfect.
more
question.
numerous.
We have a question from our audience. When is the very best time to visit the Falkland Islands, in your opinion?
It's I would say it's either in late November, early December, or in January. But you would be seeing two completely different things. So it's I think the best thing to do as well is to Google or ask me somehow, but Google and find yourself a wildlife calendar, and then sit down and think about what it is you want to see the most. Is it chicks? Is it is it fledged birds? Is it mating? Is it elephant seals? Is it king penguins? Is it albatross? And see which fits your mode, kind of the best in that sense.
Another question is, which penguins do you see in the Falkland Islands that you do not see in Antarctica?
Okay, good question. I've got to think, because I was thinking about South Georgia for a minute, but so you'll get the five different species that I mentioned in the Falkland Islands. In South Georgia, you will get king penguins, Gentoo penguins. You'll also get a lot of macaroni penguins, um, and you will also have a few chinstrap penguins as well. When you get to Antarctica, it becomes more about chinstrap penguins, Adelie penguins, and Gentoo penguins down there as well. So I hope that's helpful. But you never know. This year in the Falklands, I saw a Delhi penguin, northern rockhopper penguin, and we had our first sighting of a little blue penguin from Australia. So, kind of things happen. Yeah.
That must have been cute. So, when visiting wildlife areas and colonies are in these remote places, will they see communities and residents along with the wildlife areas? That's another question from our
Occasionally, okay. In South Georgia, of course, no, because there is no resident population there. There are people there are scientists and teams at some of the sites like Grytviken. But on the Falkland Islands, at some of the sites like Saunders Island, you will meet the owners of the island, and the people that are there. They will come down. But there are some destinations where the team has just the permission to land, so it will be a mix. But people welcome conversation. People are friendly in the Falkland Islands. Kind of we want to talk to like-minded people. So kind of if you are on one of these trips, please don't be shy. Please do go and talk to anyone that's there. But also remember, there may also be some land-based tourists there, so they might not be the owners, but um, and and I guess another point that I just thought about as we were saying that too was that when I talked about an expedition vessel going into one of these locations, that there won't be two expedition ships there. There will only be one. There will only be one there. So if people are a lot these days, people are very conscious, and I understand exactly this about numbers of people at locations. But we will only be kind of the team at Sea Spirit there.
The last
So we went
question.
we went past. Yep.
Go ahead. Last question we can all answer, and then I'll give a rousing authorization to this. Is the Sea Spirit a good ship to see wildlife? And is it easy to go outside and around the ship? Absolutely. She's very navigable, but it's really easy to go outside on the decks. It's a small ship, and there's spots for everybody, so it's really easy. But I'm sure Kate and Andy would agree with me.
No,
Absolutely. I
absolutely.
think
There's yeah.
one of the difference between the Sea Spirit and a lot of other ships that do go to Falkland, South Georgia, and Antarctica is that Sea Spirit features quite a lot of open decks space, like Kathy said, and it's not only on the top decks. Literally, on deck 2 or 3, you can already get outside. You can see very, very clearly if we, for example, have a whale encounter and we are aboard the ship. So there's a lot of space, and on one of the decks, on deck 4, we have a 360 um, a walkaway deck,
Promenade.
walk around deck, and if you see whales on one side and then if you see dolphins on the other side, at your comfort, you can just go from one side to another and enjoy the beautiful encounters. Um, uh, Andy, I don't know if you have anything to add about Seaspirit being a comfortable ship for the wildlife and explorations from the guide's perspective, maybe.
No, I mean, no, just agree with everything that's said there. I mean, one of the places where you might tend to hang around on the boat is up where the bar area and the coffee machines are, and the library, of course, there as well. So you can get views out through the windows of all of those places and access to the viewing areas directly outside. So what we also do is that if on board, if we see something, particularly from the bridge, I'm talking about cetaceans really there, or if one of us guides is outside and see birds, kind of wandering albatross, snowy albatross being one of the big ones there, and the northern royal albatross, the great albatross species, we'll announce that over a tannoy, so people don't miss out as well. But no, it's no fantastic view. And the other thing too, of course, is that we get into zodiacs, and sometimes we do a zodiac cruise if it's the only option available, or to some sites that's all you can do. That on that case, the zodiacs are incredibly safe, they're incredibly comfortable, and they're not overloaded, both from a safety perspective, but also so people can view the wildlife and take photographs of the wildlife. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Andy. Uh, just to speak just a little bit more about South Georgia, we've shown some beautiful pictures of Grootsviken, and Grootsviken is a very special place in South Georgia as well, because you can visit and honor Sir Ernest Shackleton at his grave. And of course, you've all heard about the explorations and about his endeavors. So this is definitely one of the must-see and must visit places during our trips when we go to South Georgia. But of course, coming back to the wildlife, Andy, I do have a question to you, because this is something that we are asked quite often. So the king penguins. Numerous colonies and quite a lot of guests who are planning to travel to South Georgia. Of course, they want to see the brown fluffy chicks. What's the best time? Are they around all summer long, or is there a specific time to be able to see those?
Okay, so king penguins are different to all of the other species of penguins, apart from maybe the emperor penguin. I don't know about the emperor, but they all other penguins have an annual cycle for their chicks. The king penguins don't. The breeding cycle for a king penguin is kind of about 14 months. So it's different. But what this does mean is that with the other species, that you either see them with on eggs, with chicks, or just on their own. But with these king penguins, you can go and see penguins on eggs, while some are still have a chick beside them there. So kind of all throughout the spring and the early summer, kind of you will have these brown teddy bear kind of type chicks that are there. And then kind of when we get to Christmas and New Year time, I'm talking about the Falklands here. I'm not sure exactly if it's the same in South Georgia, but I assume it is. But in the Falklands, normally in the first week of January, the chicks start to be born. So if you want to see young chicks, it's better to wait till kind of after January, in that sense. But if you want to see them, the king penguins on eggs, and the chicks that are now probably kind of 9, 10 months old, then there'll be lots around. So as the season goes on, those brown teddy bear chicks get less and less, as they tend to develop more adult plumage, and then leave. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Andy. And I think now we have time to quickly tell you about the itineraries that we have aboard the Spirit that actually bring you to these absolute gems and wildlife paradises. Kathy, do you want to cover that? I will get there in a second.
Absolutely. So we are going to start off the season on October 23rd to the Falkland Islands in South Georgia. We have some aggressive pricing for those folks who are interested. They can give their travel advisor a call or call our dedicated reservation team. So we're going to start off the season. Then we're going to do South Georgia, Falklands, and Antarctica from October all the way through March. These range from 10 to 23 days. And again, great pricing. They're going to leave from Ushuaia and go over to the Falklands, South Georgia, as you can see on the map. And then we're going to have about 3 to 4 of these. We have that October date with the Falklands and South Georgia every year. So if you can't do it this year, we have availability for next year as well. So a photographer's dream and wildlife person's dream as well. Now, the next slide will show you when we're going to from Ushuaia down to the Antarctic Peninsula. So again, so many choices for your client. There isn't one that's a bad choice. Just contact your travel agent and we will be able to get you the best rates and availability on the beautiful Sea Spirit.
Just to summarize what Kathy said, there are multiple options to come and visit both Falkland Islands and South Georgia. And as Andy said, they are only 800 miles away. Usually when we visit South Georgia, it means that we're visiting Falkland Islands or vice versa. So if you've been to Antarctica before, most likely you're still dreaming to go to South Georgia and Falkland Islands, and only once a year, once per season, we would offer you the trip that covers South Georgia and Falkland Islands. We heavily focus on these two destinations during that trip. Of course, the wildlife is the main focus when we do those departures. And again, if you would like to combine the three wonders of that side of the world, Antarctic Peninsula, South Georgia, and the Falklands, then of course we have itineraries for you as well. Generally, South Georgia is featured in our itineraries within 4 or 5 cruises from October to March. So you do have a choice of dates. And like Kathy said, we will be glad to advise you on availability and on our special offers. And one important thing that we wanted to mention, and I have to say, Andy, your talk about the wildlife, about the birds, about the penguins, cetaceans, everything is very, very exciting. And you can see the passion. You really love what you're doing. And what I'm trying to say here is that on October departure to South Georgia and Falklands, and also on the next departure that covers Antarctica, Falklands, and South Georgia, we would have Andy as our guide. And of course, if you're traveling during those days, you'll be able to ask away all the questions from our guide Andy. And of course, he will be there with other team members. But again, I hope this webinar gave you a taste of what it is to be on a ship and to get all the knowledge from the guides like we have Andy here today. We've covered a few questions during our session that appeared to be a little bit longer than we planned. But if you have more, please just reach out to one of our offices here in Cyprus or in Germany or in the States, and we will be very, very much glad to answer any of those. And now I would like to thank you, Andy, for your time, for your absolutely incredible presentation of the Falklands and South Georgia as well. And Kathy, thank you for your incredible questions. Thanks everyone for joining, for finding time. We hope that you are as inspired about South Georgia and the Falklands as we are, and we hope to see you there one day.
Bye.
Bye. Have a
Thank you
good
for
day,
joining us.
everyone.
All right.
Yes, Andy, if you have anything to say at the very end, please do.
My only comment that I have left is that I have 4 more painful months now to wait till I get on board the ship. Now I'm excited after talking about it that I want to get back on it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Andy, Kathy, Agnes. Thank you for your time and for an exciting session. See you all at the Falklands and
Thank
South
you,
Georgia.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Dankeschön. Thank you. Bye. Tschüss.